All right, so you sent this Motley Fool article over, and it's called "Why Prologis Stock Was a Winner on Thursday." And I gotta say, the headline, it really caught my eye. I'm always interested in companies that are doing well, especially in a market like this. And what really stood out to me was that it's not like your typical real estate story. It seems like Prologis is kind of at the intersection of these warehouses and, get this, artificial intelligence. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I think we should bring in our expert to kind of help us unpack this a little bit. I know you've been following Prologis for a while. What are your initial thoughts here?
It's really interesting how Prologis is kind of blurring the lines between that traditional real estate and this, like really booming tech sector.
Yeah.
This isn't just about owning warehouses anymore. It's about providing the infrastructure for that digital world.
Yeah.
And specifically for data centers that are, really important for things like AI and cloud computing.
Okay, so let's back up for a sec. This article is like hot off the press from January 23rd, 2025. It focuses on Prologis, ticker symbol PLD on the New York Stock Exchange, seeing a pretty nice 3% jump on Thursday, which significantly outpaced the S&P 500, which only grew by 0.5%. The article attributes this surge to Evercore ISI analyst Steve Sakwa raising his price target on Prologis from $111 to $115. But here's where it gets kind of interesting. Even though he raised the price target, Sakwa maintained a neutral rating on the stock. That seems a little counterintuitive, don't you think?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how nuanced these analyst ratings can be.
Yeah.
I think for someone who's looking at Prologis as a potential investment, it's really important to understand the context behind these ratings. A neutral rating doesn't necessarily mean sell. It could just mean that Sakwa believes the stock is fairly valued at its current price, maybe factoring in some short-term risks or like broader market uncertainties.
So there's more to it than just buy, sell, or hold. There's this whole layer of analysis and interpretation. I guess that's where your expertise comes in handy.
Of course. And it's crucial to consider other factors, too. Prologis actually released their Q4 2024 earnings report earlier that week, and on. They actually exceeded analyst expectations on both revenue and earnings. That kind of performance always gets investors' attention.
Now, considering Prologis is a REIT, we can't forget to look at their core funds from operations, or FFO. What did their report reveal on that front?
Prologis reported a pretty impressive 10% year-over-year growth in core FFO. This is a key metric for REITs, as it kind of indicates their ability to generate cash flow. That strong growth definitely adds to the positive sentiment surrounding the company.
Okay, so we've got Sakwa raising the price target, although with a neutral rating, and then we have a strong Q4 performance exceeding expectations. Sounds like it was a good week for Prologis. Was there anything else driving this momentum?
Absolutely. The article also mentions that JP Morgan Chase analyst Michael Muller maintained an overweight rating on Prologis, which is essentially a buy recommendation. With a price target of $131, this is even higher than Sakwa's target, which is a very bullish outlook.
Wow, $131. He's definitely betting on their continued success. What's fueling this optimism from Muller?
Well, there are a couple of key factors at play. First, Prologis is seeing really strong leasing activity, especially after the 2024 presidential election, which may have alleviated some of that economic uncertainty. And second, this ties back to what we were talking about earlier. They're making these strategic moves into the data center market.
Right, that data center connection. This is where things get really interesting for me, and I'm sure for our listener as well. We're living in a world that's becoming so reliant on data, especially with the rise of AI, and Prologis seems to be recognizing this and positioning themselves to capitalize on it.
Exactly. They're not just building warehouses. They're building the foundation for this digital revolution. And by connecting their real estate business to the expanding AI industry, they're tapping into a market with huge growth potential.
So they're kind of like a stealth tech play disguised as this real estate giant. But how exactly are they making this transition into the data center world? Are they just repurposing old warehouses, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more nuanced than just throwing some servers in an old warehouse. What's fascinating is that Prologis is approaching this strategically. They're developing these specialized facilities that are designed specifically for data centers. We're talking about things like robust power grids with redundancy, advanced cooling systems to handle all the heat generated by the servers, and top-notch security to protect all that valuable data housed within these facilities.
So it sounds like they're leveraging their real estate expertise, but they're applying it to a whole new type of asset. This raises an interesting question for our listener. What are the potential risks and rewards of investing in a company like Prologis, especially considering this foray into the tech world?
Well, on the reward side, Prologis is already in a dominant position in the industrial real estate market. They've got this vast global portfolio. And they've shown a really consistent track record of delivering returns to shareholders. Their move into data centers, which is essential for cloud computing and AI. It opens up these new avenues for growth and profitability as demand in this sector just explodes.
So they're a strong player, and they're making strategic moves to capitalize on these emerging trends. It's certainly an optimistic picture, but as with any investment, there are always risks. What should our listener be aware of?
Right. No investment is a sure thing. One potential concern is the overall economic climate. If we see a major downturn, demand for both warehouses and data centers could weaken. And that would, of course, impact their earnings.
Economic cycles are always something to consider, especially for a company like Prologis that's tied to both physical and digital infrastructure. Are there any other risk factors worth noting?
Another risk is competition. The data center market is attracting a lot of interest, and Prologis is going up against some big players, including these tech giants like Google and Amazon who are building their own data center networks. Prologis is going to have to compete aggressively to secure those lucrative contracts.
So it's not a guaranteed win. They have to fight for their share of the market. What about interest rates? With Prologis investing so heavily in these new data centers, wouldn't rising interest rates increase their borrowing costs and potentially impact their profitability?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Higher interest rates could definitely increase their financing expenses and put pressure on their margins. Additionally, some analysts are worried about the long-term impact of automation and AI on warehouse demand. If robots start handling more warehouse tasks, it could potentially lead to a decrease in demand for that traditional warehouse space.
Okay, so there are definitely challenges and uncertainties to consider alongside the growth potential. Out of all these factors, what stands out to you as the most crucial aspect for someone considering investing in Prologis?
I think the key takeaway here is understanding that Prologis isn't just a traditional real estate company anymore. This expansion into data centers, which is being driven by this AI boom, is a major shift in their business model. They're positioning themselves as a vital piece of that digital infrastructure. But like any investment, it's important to weigh the potential rewards against those risks. And in Prologis' case, these risks are intertwined with these broader economic trends, technological advancements, and the competitive landscape.
That's an excellent point. It's a good reminder that investing requires due diligence and careful consideration. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the potential impact of AI on Prologis' future. This feels like uncharted territory for a lot of investors, even those who are familiar with real estate. Could you elaborate on how AI could shape Prologis' growth trajectory, both positively and potentially negatively?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up because the AI element, it really adds another layer of complexity to Prologis' story. On the one hand, as AI gets more sophisticated, it requires massive amounts of data storage and processing power, and that translates into this huge demand for data centers. And that's where Prologis comes in. They're not just providing the space, they're creating the infrastructure that enables this whole AI revolution.
So in a way, they're kind of like picks and shovels during a gold rush. They're not necessarily the ones developing the AI itself, but they're providing the tools that make it all possible.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And that's what's got a lot of investors excited. As AI continues to grow like crazy, the demand for data centers is only going to go up. And Prologis, with their strategic focus on this sector, is in a prime position to ride that wave.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Couldn't any real estate company just jump on this data center bandwagon? What makes Prologis stand out in this increasingly crowded field?
Well, that's a fair question. And it shows how important it is to look beyond the hype. What sets Prologis apart is they're not just building any old warehouse and calling it a data center. They really understand the specific requirements these facilities need. They're thinking about power redundancy to make sure everything keeps running, sophisticated cooling systems to handle all the heat generated by servers, and strong security protocols to protect all that valuable data in those centers.
So it's not just about square footage. It's about creating this specialized environment that's optimized for those high-performance computing needs. It sounds like they're taking their real estate expertise and taking it to a whole new level.
Exactly. And beyond the technical side, Prologis has another big advantage, their global reach. They have properties near major cities and internet hubs, and that's essential for data centers. They need to minimize delays and make sure data can be transferred quickly.
So they're combining their real estate knowledge with a focus on one of the hottest sectors in tech, and they're doing it on a global scale. I'm starting to see why those analysts are so bullish on Prologis. But let's bring it back to our listener. What does all of this mean for someone thinking about investing in Prologis?
It's about seeing the bigger picture. Investing in Prologis isn't just about betting on warehouses. It's about investing in the future of technology. It's understanding that data centers are the foundation of the digital economy. And Prologis is becoming a vital part of that.
So it's almost like getting in on the ground floor of a tech revolution,
Yeah.
but with the stability of a well-established company.
Exactly, and that's what makes Prologis so interesting. They offer this blend of stability and growth potential, which is pretty rare in today's market. But as we've said, there are always risks to keep in mind.
Right. And I think that's a great point to end on. We've explored Prologis's stock performance, their move into data centers, and how they're connected to this exciting but unpredictable world of AI. We've covered a lot. And I hope this has given you, our listener, a better understanding of what's driving Prologis and what the future might hold for them. But remember, this is just one piece of the puzzle. Do your own research, think about the risks and the rewards, and as always, make smart decisions that fit your investment goals. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
That's a great point to bring up because that AI piece, it really adds another layer to Prologis' story, like on the positive side. As AI applications become more and more complex, they need tons of data storage and processing power. That means a surge in demand for data centers, and that's where Prologis comes in. They're not just providing space, they're creating that infrastructure that makes this AI revolution happen.
So it's like they're the picks and shovels during a gold rush. They're not the ones finding the gold, but they're providing the tools to do it.
Exactly. That's a great analogy, and that's what has a lot of investors excited. You know, as AI keeps growing, the demand for data centers is only going to increase. Yeah. And Prologis, with their focus on this sector, they're in a great position to benefit from that.
Okay. But what's stopping any real estate company from jumping on the data center train? What makes Prologis different in this crowded market?
That's a good question, and it highlights why it's important to look past the hype. What sets Prologis apart is that they're not just building any warehouse and calling it a data center. They get it. They understand what these facilities need. They're thinking about things like power redundancy to prevent outages, advanced cooling systems to handle the heat from all the servers, and tight security to protect all that data.
So it's not just about the space itself. It's about creating this really specialized environment, optimized for high-performance computing. So they're taking their real estate expertise to a whole other level.
Yeah, exactly. And beyond the technical stuff, Prologis has another big plus, their global reach. They own properties near major population centers and internet hubs. And that's key for data centers, because they need to minimize delays and ensure fast data transfer speeds.
So they're combining their real estate knowledge with a focus on a hot tech sector. And they're doing it globally. I'm seeing why those analysts are so bullish on Prologis. But let's bring it back to our listener for a minute. What does all this mean for someone considering investing in Prologis?
It's about understanding the big picture. Investing in Prologis isn't just about betting on warehouses. It's about investing in the future of technology. It's recognizing that data centers are the backbone of the digital economy. And Prologis is becoming a key part of that infrastructure.
It's almost like investing at the beginning of a tech revolution, but with the stability of a well-established company.
Right. That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes Prologis such an interesting case. It offers investors this mix of stability and growth potential, which is hard to find in today's market. But like we talked about, there are always risks to consider.
Right. And I think that's the perfect takeaway. We've looked at Prologis stock performance, their move into the world of data centers, and their link to the exciting but uncertain world of AI. Hopefully this has given you, our listener, a better understanding of what's behind Prologis' success and what the future might look like for them. But remember, this is just a starting point. Do your own research, weigh those risks and rewards, and make informed decisions that align with your own investment goals.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.